All right, NFL futures. So as I was looking at the matchups for today, or this weekend, and the matchup tonight, I was noticing, as we all are, come on, it's not like anything nobody else noticed, but I love this time of the season where, the standings, each game is crucial. In the NFC West, the Seahawks and Rams are only 2 games up on the Cardinals, and the Cardinals play at the Giants, and the Giants are tied with the Washington football team in first place in the NFC East. So that's a tight race for both of them. Packers, not so much. They're 9-3, and the Vikings are 6-6. But the Vikings play the Bucs, and the Bucs are 7-5. So both of them are looking at their playoff seeding as who can win their division. Then we've got Bills and Dolphins. The Bills are 9-3. Dolphins are a game behind them, and the Patriots are 6-6, 2 games behind them. And the Chiefs play at the Dolphins. The Steelers play at the Bills. The Bills and Dolphins have to win because, of course, if the Patriots win at the Chargers and they're 7-6 and the Dolphins are 8-5 and the Bills end up 9-4, hello, watch out. Patriots have won 2 in a row. Tennessee and Colts are both tied at 8-4. The Browns, the Steelers lost a game. They're 11-1 and the Browns are 9-3, 2 games back. The Ravens are 4 games back, so I know that's a little tougher, but the Ravens have an easier schedule, so there's a chance they have a higher probability of making the playoffs than the Browns, with the Browns being 2 games away. If the Steelers don't win at the Bills and they are a game behind, the Browns have won 4 in a row. Again, there you go. Another game where you're like, woo, this is crucial. And the Colts play at the Raiders. The Raiders are 7-5. The Colts are 8-4. The playoff picture, it's coming into view, but it's a lot more difficult. So what I wanted to look at is going to DraftKings and the NFL futures and looking at the division winners. Who's going to win the divisions? Now, we start with I'm looking at the tough matchup, the divisions where it's close enough where every game matters. And right now, that is the NFC East, where the Giants and Washington are both 5-7. 5-7. The Giants are minus 143 to win the NFC East. And the Washington football team are looking on the outside at plus 140. And that's a tough one. Obviously, look, not that you didn't know this if you haven't been listening to the show, but of course I am a Washington football team fan. But I am strictly looking at the opponents here. And I see a Giants team that's got a tough road ahead of them. A very, very, very tough road ahead of them. When you look at their schedule, now they played well. You got the Cardinals on Sunday that are trying to get into the playoffs after the Giants flew all the way to Seattle and crushed them. I mean, defensively, just shut them down. They won 17-12. But you got the Cardinals at home, which could be a hiccup game if you're, riding high because you beat Seattle and not really realizing that the Cardinals are a hungry team too. Then you've got the Browns, which are fighting for their playoff life, but again, in New York City. So MetLife Stadium will be bumping the next 2 weekends. Then you play at the Ravens, and you end the season against the Cowboys. And the Cowboys would love probably nothing more than to knock the Giants out of the playoffs. Probably more so than Washington football team. But the Washington football team's already won both games against said Cowboys. So then we look at the Washington football team. They play at the 49ers this weekend. Then they play the Seahawks at home. Last Seahawks game I remember was a playoff game when RG3 got hurt. Oh boy, that was rough. That's the last game I remember. That was pretty exciting. But they play the Seahawks in Washington. Then they end the season against the Panthers at home. I see two teams, one team in the Seahawks that, no game is a gimme. No game would I ever say that the Seattle Seahawks are going to give away a game. But I could see a team that, maybe if they win this weekend, maybe, the Washington football team beat the Steelers. They saw what the Giants did to the Seahawks. They can get that win. And then they end the season against, right now they are 4-8 Carolina Panthers. That should be a win. Ron Rivera going against his former team to end the season. So in this, I'm taking the Washington football team at plus 140 to win the NFC East. How crazy would that be? How crazy would that be considering where this team started, where the season started for the NFC East as a whole, saying it's the worst division, and not that it's any better right now, but I still feel like, you know what? I could see a scenario where the Washington football team wins the NFC East. So then I go to the AFC East. We've got the Buffalo Bills at minus 1,115, the Dolphins at plus 700, and the Patriots at plus 2,000. Why not just take the Patriots? If you can get it at plus 2,000, the Bills are playing the Steelers. If they lose that game and the Patriots are a game out, and you can get the Patriots, who still have Bill Belichick, and Cam Newton seems to be, maybe they're playing better. How about that? All three of these teams have won 2 in a row. So let's see if they, can all three win again. But I might take the Patriots with that bet. Next one, the AFC South, we've got the Titans and Colts. Indianapolis Colts both at 8-4. Both at 8-4. You can get the Titans at minus 200 or the Colts at plus 150. That's a little bit of a tighter race. The Colts play at the Raiders versus the Texans and then at the Steelers. To me, that's a tough schedule. Because even the Texans should not be as bad as they are this year, and they came within the fumble away from winning last week. I think that's a tough schedule. The Titans are, to me, heading in the wrong direction. But their schedule is easier. They play at the Jaguars versus the Lions, and then they play at the Packers. So if they can right the ship in many ways, I think I'm going to stick with the Titans at minus 200. So I'm taking the Titans at minus 200. I'm going to take a flyer on the Patriots at plus 2,000 because they're breathing on the necks of the Dolphins and Bills. And I think this weekend will be key for both of those teams. And I think the Chiefs beat the Dolphins in Miami. Now, I do think I think the Bills can beat the Steelers. But the Steelers are a very formidable opponent. Now, if you want to take another flyer, you could try the Browns at plus 1,200, although I don't see the Steelers losing many more and opening the window any more than it is for the Browns. But if the Bills beat the Steelers, as I said, the Browns are a game behind. So if you want to take another flyer, take one on the Browns at plus 1,200. At plus 1,200. Rams, Seahawks are both tied as well in the NFC West. You can get the Rams at minus 155 or the Seahawks at plus 125. Now, I look at this schedule, and you got the Jets. That's a win for the Seahawks. Then, as I mentioned, you got at the football team. Washington has a formidable defense, and we saw what the Giants defense did to Seattle. If Washington can do that too, man, that's a tough one. But the NFL, you got to hand it to the people who schedule these games in pretty much all sports. Basketball does a good job of it. Baseball and football, final game of the year versus the Rams. Both of these teams very well may be tied and playing each other. And maybe that could determine who's going to win the NFC West. So you got the Rams at minus 155 and the Seahawks at plus 125. If I look at that schedule, and then I'm looking at the Rams, both teams are 8-4. The Rams play the Patriots this weekend, then the Jets, and at the Seahawks. We'll get into my picks next. But that's a tough one. Those are some good games. Good games.